Your Royal Highness, all my other hosts of this event, in particular the Malaysian Open University, and my hosts of the Peace Foundation, and all other guests of these organizations, ladies and gentlemen. Usually, as a scientist, I'm asked here to present my work and the investigations in science. However, today I've been asked to talk about science itself. Science as a bridge between cultures and nations. Well, our world is characterized by differences. All nations of this planet are conspicuously different. The people living in these nations all differ from one another, and this, of course, is a good thing. Because of differences, there's trade between nations, there's discussion between people, and differences in time allow for progress to take place. Differences are the basics for the process of evolution and, indeed, the very basis of life. Also, the progress in scientific thinking can only come about when different people come with different ideas, investigate different mysteries, and following different approaches to stumble upon solutions of the difficulties that they encounter. Some scientists, for instance, they spend their lives hiking through difficult terrain, and some will build delicate microscopes to do their investigation, some build gigantic machines, and still others do experiments only in their imagination, like in fact myself. Some investigators work with the most meticulous accuracy. Others follow wild and sloppy ideas. They all investigate the same world, the world that we live in. The world is so vast and so complex that there's place for all these people. Different nations with different ethnic, religious, and cultural backgrounds all participate in the same endeavor, and all of them are sometimes useful and successful, while very often many attempts at disclosing the truth fail. This is our fate. There are a few things, however, that all scientific searches have in common. We build on each other's experiences and we communicate. We communicate our results to our colleagues. Science is a collective exercise. Only by being open and by using the results and the openness of others can one contribute to the scientific adventure in a meaningful way. From what I just said, it should be clear that science is not a privilege of the happy few. It cannot be confined to the white males in the industrialized countries. Thanks to a process called globalization, thanks to the internet also, we can look at the future in which underprivileged people from developing countries can have access to modern scientific knowledge. A future in which all, in principle, would have equal possibilities, equal opportunities to learn and to be educated. Sure, there still are gigantic obstacles blocking these opportunities for large numbers of people. But I would also like to stress the enormously promising possibilities of the future. And I like to look ahead and speculate on how the world might come to a change in this respect. What I said actually doesn't only hold for science. It also holds for commerce, for culture, for arts, for sport. However, I believe that the scientific exchanges will have the deepest and the most lasting effects in a more distant future. Science and technology are the most essential pivots for our development. And by embracing the most modern findings, nations can maneuver themselves in a position to join with the industrialization process and the associated wealth. And when I talk about wealth, I mean that in the widest sense of the word. Living a healthy life in a clean environment, and a stable and just social system is often an even more desirable form of wealth than just the possession of exorbitant amounts of currency. Countries that today are counted among the poorest of the underdeveloped regions can change tomorrow. All they need to do is join the rich nations with all the power they have and learn about their technological and scientific achievements. The obstacles are well known: unstable, violent and corrupt political systems, ruthless military power, and criminal organizations are deliberately blocking such a process. If these could be replaced today, then poverty, suppression and war could come to an end tomorrow. From a purely scientific point of view, this planet has more than the resources needed to keep its population healthy and secure, even if this population were to grow even further. Science is showing us the way. So I don't believe the sometimes fatalistic point of view that poverty is a necessary presence on our planet. If it were only for science, poverty would not simply be there. What kind of science should people do in the poorest of the developing countries, regions? There is an enormous amount of choice for poor countries to do science. And of course, one's mind drifts to those sciences from which they can benefit directly. It would be wise for the inhabitants of those countries to spend research efforts on, say, environmental sciences, especially on their own environment, the science and technology of water distribution, the quality, availability and use of water, the availability of the exploitation of energy resources, food production methods, health issues, climate, and issues of the social sciences, like the combat of poverty, as I mentioned, class inequality, corruption and crime, for instance. However, I also believe it would be wrong for those nations only to focus on such sciences that have directly applications. If indeed the Western world would have done that, our science today, at present, would have been about how to produce cheaper and more efficient candles, in the fanciest colors perhaps, while you would still not have electric light in all its varieties as we know today. However, even that is not exactly the right argument for poor countries to go into modern, pure science, the more glamorous kind of science. I believe the correct argument for that is that this is the only way to generate a class of highly skilled scientists and educators who would be the only ones able to lead the country into the 21st century and beyond. The poorest countries in general feel no constraint in buying the newest high-tech weaponry from the West. Therefore, the least thing they can do to balance that should be to also buy the peaceful technologies of modern science and participate with as much vigor as they can. For instance, India and China are doing this. And even though some of us in the West still regard them as third world countries, they are making serious attempts to do the most fashionable things, such as sending humans into space, firing spacecraft to the moon, and building the most state-of-the-art particle accelerator facilities. And as I'll explain, those are the most fancy things you can do, the most glamorous things you can do in science.